This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Trying to talk with Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Connor, appreciate you moving your hit with us a little bit later on. Matt Jones is out now golfing, and I'm holding things down for the time being. And I have, my head's all full of college baseball. Tell me what I need to be paying attention to right now in the world of college football.
That's a good question. ACC right now is having these meetings with a very interesting divide between kind of the haves and have-nots of these schools that would like to have increased revenue distribution to be able to not be lapped by the Big Ten and SEC, which the ACC currently is. But it's creating a weird dynamic because if you're paying attention to history in college football, they're like, okay, when was the last time a conference essentially gave schools preferential treatment and gave increased revenue opportunities? And you go back to Texas and the Longhorn Network and what that became and how it blew up in the Big 12's face because it was kind of the beginning of the end. And now with the ACC, we're not talking about this being the beginning of the end, but the grant of rights deal locks them in through 2036. So if they're pretty much at a place where they're like, well, we can't go anywhere, we want to get more money. And now we're living in a world in which UCF is going to be bringing in more money than Florida State. And that probably doesn't sit very well in Tallahassee.
So essentially this whole grant of rights thing that was signed, what was that, 6 years ago? It was like a 20-year thing. Are we allowed to call it the single worst contract in college football history?
You know what? It remains to be seen because we need probably like another decade worth of context. If we see these schools clearly get passed up and the ACC is just a total afterthought, like they don't even get close to a national championship, then I think maybe we can go there. But I think there are some who would look at certain contracts for coaches, maybe Jimbo Fisher, if he doesn't get out of the 5-7 hole that he currently has A&M in. You could say that's maybe a really bad contract. I think the Pac-12's media contract that they signed with Larry Scott was pretty awful when you look back on it and how they didn't necessarily understand the rights bidding wars that the SEC and Big Ten had figured out. I think there are a lot of really, really bad contracts in college football, a lot of money spent on coaches not to work and not do their jobs. But, yeah, I mean, it could end up being up there. Like, we'll kind of wait and see. Maybe we wait another, 5-6 years and kind of see. But it's so far not looking great.
Well, the deal with the Pac-12, you ended up creating a landscape where it was just easy for the two anchor schools in that league to just leave and go to the Big Ten. At least with the ACC, they've got the grant of rights, and it's pretty ironclad. But what they're doing is creating a two-tier system within the same conference, right? I mean, you might view in the SEC that there are tiers of programs, and there are, but they're all making the same money that's coming directly from the conference. So they're all still, in that sense, equal partners. And we can joke about preference towards Alabama and Georgia, and maybe there is in some cases. But as far as the bowl distribution money, as far as the TV distribution money, it's identical. And you like to feel like you are conference partners, which are business partners when it comes right down to it, that you're all viewed equally. And what you're doing in the ACC potentially is creating half the league that matters more and the other half that doesn't. And what that eventually leads to is a league that dies.
And if you're making a lot of money, it's fine, right? That's why there isn't some sort of big gripe within the Big Ten and within the SEC among the elite teams of, hey, why are we getting the same amount of money as the Vanderbilts and the Rutgers and programs like that who, let's be honest, they're not pulling their weight from an athletic standpoint and contributing the same way that the Alabamas, Georgias, and Ohio State are. But when you're making that type of money, you realize you're at the top of the food chain. It's not like you can go other place that money elsewhere. It's entirely different. Florida State's looking around at everybody else, and Clemson's looking around at everyone else going, wait a minute, they're getting all this money because they had the foresight with their broadcasting contract, their media rights deal, to understand the way of the future and understand that you should probably stagger these deals, not necessarily lock yourself into anything for 20 years, especially during a time when, cable television was changing so much throughout the entire 2010 decade. and you look back on that deal, which, yes, from a fan's perspective, is really great to say, this is our identity. We don't want to have teams leave. This is what it's going to be like. But at the same time, you also handicapped yourself by virtue of not being able to have these bidding wars and understanding that you have some very disgruntled big-time programs within your own conference who are seeing these other schools rake in money that you feel like you should be worthy of.
Do you believe the rumblings? Because it's happened 2 years in a row now, whether it's been UCLA and USC to the Big Ten and Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC, and then, of course, all the other moves that have come after that. Now it's supposedly Washington and Oregon, out of the Pac-12. And I expected to hear something like this in the summer, because if playing season is the actual season, and then there's spring season and talking season, which starts around July, then there's a new season in the college football calendar, and it's called conference jumping season. So why not make it 3 years in a row?
It seems like it's going to happen. It does. And maybe those schools were kind of waiting to see what their options would look like, and kind of waiting to see the way that these negotiations would play out with the Pac-12 media contract. And then you kind of take a look around the landscape of the sport, and it ain't a Power 5. It's a Power 2. And I say that as somebody who really likes what the Pac-12 brings to the table from a competitiveness standpoint this year. I mean, they have 4 teams who could start off in the top 10. They have what should be their best chance to get to the college football playoff this year. They have the Heisman Trophy winner. But the problem is, if you're 12 schools, we can have these nice things in preseason. It doesn't change the fact that your media contract doesn't compete with the big boys. You haven't won a championship in big-time revenue sports, that is college football or college basketball, since USC 2004. And you're lacking relevance, and you don't really have a strong claim to make those teams stay. And when they see what's available and they see, oh, wait, we wouldn't just be out here on an island. Look, USC, UCLA, they already did it. It kind of opens up the floodgates, and that's why I think this has felt inevitable, and it feels like probably only a matter of time before the Big Ten makes this happen.
Connor O'Gara with us from Saturday Down South, and I saw a couple days ago you put out, and I love the name of the team that you came up with here, the All Bang the Drum team. And this has to say something about the guy you wrote about, because I know you're banging the drum heavily about KJ Jefferson, but maybe that's a little too easy of a pick to choose. So you're banging the drum on Al Walcott, the safety transfer out of Baylor. Why is that?
Besides the fact that Arkansas desperately needs help in the secondary for a team that finished dead last in the country against the pass, I think he has the ability to be, and I might get some pushback by saying it, he has the ability to be a healthier version of Jalen Catalon. And I love seeing Jalen Catalon on the field, all the things that he can do, the way that he approaches the game, kind of more like a mid-90s safety with some of the things that he does and how physical he is. But, man, it was just a shame to watch him get hurt the way that he did. Now you get Walcott coming in from a Baylor defense that we know he was coached up very well with Dave Aranda. He did a lot of things for them as the second-team All-Big 12 guy. And you could stick him all over the place. This feels like in year one with Travis Williams, even if they are improved, that's not really saying a whole lot statistically speaking. This feels like a group that is going to need a guy that can do a bunch of things for you. And that's what Walcott can do. He can rush the passer, he can play in coverage, he can play slot corner. He can do a lot of these different things that you need a jack-of-all-trades guy to be able to accomplish in a defense that's kind of lacking those proven guys. And to have seen somebody that's done it at the Power 5 level, who has had that type of development already in his career, that doesn't grow on trees. That was a big-time commitment when Arkansas got that back in, what was it, December. And I think it's one of those things that we could be talking about as like, hey, if they're going to improve, it's because they had guys like this step up. And even if he's only a one-year guy, I think you still need that to try and establish some sort of defensive identity, because they just did not have that last year.
You've seen where they really rebuilt through the portal is the defensive line. Just got a 4th Division I transfer for the defensive line at Arkansas. That's Keevy Rose from Louisiana Tech and All-Conference USA. So you got the kid from Maryland, Pitt, Jeff Coat out of Mizzou. And,
yeah.
I mean, they really rebuilt things as far as that defensive line, and I expect that they'll be better up front this year.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because I think there's a lot of teams in the SEC, Auburn's another one, who have looked at the portal and said, wait a minute, we can rebuild ourselves at the line of scrimmage here in the portal and not necessarily just have to trust our own strength and conditioning program. We can get guys that have been in a system for 3-4 years and trust that they're going to be further developed even than maybe, a 4-star sophomore that we have on our roster who, maybe only played a handful of snaps last year. We don't really know what to expect. You can kind of make sure that area is taken care of in a different sort of way. And Arkansas has been able to do that. And Jeff Coates, somebody who kind of got a little bit lost in the shuffle there, as weird as that is to say, about a much improved Mizzou front last year with Blake Baker. But, still you're able to get guys who have been there, who have that size, have that experience. And when you're a first-year defensive coordinator, you're looking for any sort of way you can establish that defensive identity. Obviously, the specialty being defensive line for Travis Williams. Would hope that that's going to be an area that can improve for an Arkansas team that just desperately needs that help and needs as many ready-to-play guys as humanly possible.
All right. DraftKings says Arkansas over-under number of wins is 7. I wouldn't know what to think right now. I expect there'll be still a couple more transfers. Who knows if that would change the way you view it? Do you go over or under 7 wins?
I hate that number. I hated that number.
Right, it's the only one that doesn't have a half attached to it. What happened there?
I know. I have no idea. They didn't get the hook on that one. It's weird. I would probably go over, but I wouldn't feel particularly good about it just because all the questions that we just listed off defensively are still there. Even though I am a believer in KJ and this offense with Dan Enos, it's still a schedule that even if it is more favorable in non-conference play this year than it was last year, you still have the SEC West. And having to deal with that, if you have any sort of questions about depth, it's daunting. It really is. Now, who knows? Maybe this could look really dumb and they could be setting up for, that 9-3 season that we were maybe expecting last year, and this is all going to be moot. But I still don't really like that number. I would stay away from that. I think there are other West numbers that are a little bit more intriguing from the preseason outlook. But, yeah, Vegas kind of knows what it's doing on that one.
BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right down to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.